Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And, Domino's around here somewhere. But, I'm frankly pissed off today. I don't know. I have been probably waiting to do this for quite some time. So, one of the earlier big videos that I did in this channel was called The OSR is Cutting Edge. And it was 7 years ago or more that I did that. It was probably right around 7 years, actually. And so that's quite a long time. And I had, in it, made an explanation that what most people think the OSR is not that, right? That both in the sense that most people thought that the OSR was just clones of old D&D rules, and in the sense that most people thought that it was just a kind of insular group of people that only want to play the actual games from the 1970s, right? And both of those were untrue. And I went on to prove it by showing that actually the OSR is a design school. And it is a design school that creates, yes, it's done clones, but that's the least interesting part of the OSR. And the most popular and most interesting part of the OSR today, just as it was 7 years ago, frankly, is the third wave of the OSR, which is creating all kinds of fascinating RPG products. But the reason I've been pissed off is that I've just... every once in a while there is some video that someone talks about the OSR, and almost always in those videos, when you have people that are, a lot of them are not OSR people, obviously, but the way they describe the OSR sounds like the only thing you're doing there is playing like AD&D First Edition, or maybe Basic Expert, right? And that's it. When in fact, hardly any OSR products run on AD&D First Edition. A lot of them do run on Basic Expert, but the vast majority of them are very significantly different from Basic Expert. They're avant-garde RPGs. They're new RPGs that do new and exciting things, right? So that was annoying me. It was annoying me, and it was annoying me seeing people that know better that end up doing a talk about the OSR and describe it as if the only thing that exists in OSR are things like Labyrinth Lords and OSC and all of that, right? And we're still, some of them jump in and say, oh yeah, and then Shadow Dark changed everything. What? Again, there have been 7 years ago, I was already showing a video where I showed just how huge a plethora of variety and creativity is in the OSR, and why I predicted that it was the most successful, it's going to be the most successful design movement. And it has been. In the last 5 years, the OSR has outdone third-party 5th edition in terms of crowdfunding, right? So it is a bigger movement than third-party 5th edition, all right? And so, like, to have people saying this, especially people that I know better, but they're just being lazy about it, really pisses me off. So once again, I am going to be doing a video where I'm going to try to explain to people who, you can use this video to understand that the OSR is not just a bunch of old D&D clones. The OSR has some of the greatest, most impressive, most sophisticated variations on RPG with some of the best features of utility based in directly because of the fact that all OSR products are compatible with each other, that makes it the best genre for you to be playing in. Or not genre, the best movement for you to be playing with, because there's multiple genres of games in OSR. But fundamentally, it is the place where if you want to get the most out of your RPG experience, you play in the OSR, because you can grab any 2 OSR books and mash them together and do whatever you want with them. Okay, so here I have, by the way, you got over here is Baptism of Fire, right? My best-selling OSR game, like most, almost all of my games are OSR, unless you go really far back to like before OSR was a thing. Baptism of Fire is set in early medieval Poland, and it is a fantasy version of it, right? And you engage in all kinds of adventuring in a Slavic world, right? And with all the monsters and the weird magic and all the stuff that's in there. And by default, you are Christians who are trying to bring the unity of Christianity to Poland at the dawn of the Polish state. Old School Companion 3 is a collection, this is a source book really, of a collection of all kinds of different supplementary stuff, like including new techniques of magic, new monsters, new locations and guidelines for all kinds of different stuff that you can put into any OSR game, right? You could put it into Baptism of Fire. It's not for Baptism of Fire, but you could put it in there. You could put it into other, you could put it into your standard D&D. You could put it anywhere that is going to add more medieval authentic elements to your game, right? And it's full of really fantastic stuff. It's the largest and the last and the largest of the Old School Companions. So be sure to check those out. But apart from these two, I'm not going to be showing, I could probably do this video just showing all of my products, right? Because, I've got, what I want to show is the diversity of genres, the diversity of types of games. And in my own product, I've got Star Adventure, which is sci-fi. I've got World of the Last Sun, which is gonzo. I've got The Invisible College, which is modern horror. So I've got like a very wide range of games that I myself wrote without going anywhere else, right? But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show other people's games, some of which you will probably recognize from the old video 7 years ago if you watched it, that I might be using again, but some others that I've probably supplanted some of those over time. So fundamentally, the OSR occurred in 3 phases, right? Way back in like 2005, 2006 or something like that, the OSR began as a movement to reprint all the old D&D rules in a legal way, which is to say you had to rewrite them, but you can use them because the rules can't be copyrighted, right? So you don't use the text, but you use all the same rules. You rewrite it over, right? And so like Osric was one of the early ones, which took the AD&D first edition rules, rewrote them entirely, and published them as a book. And the reason for this is that you might be saying, well, why the hell would you do that? Well, back then, there was no print on demand yet, or rather, it was very rare. So none of that existed. And there were no official PDFs of these products that were available to purchase, right? There were some crappy PDFs that had been made, by scanning old books that we clung on to like gold at different moments, right? But it was not, but it was a high quality production. So the idea was that if these first OSR people were concerned that if they didn't do something about it, it would all be lost, right? And so then they ended up making these new rule books, like, Osric was AD&D first edition, Labyrinth Lord was basic expert set. What was the other one? What was there was one for the white box, anyways, for the original D&D that was at the time. It's since been pretty much supplanted, I think, but Swords and Wizardry, I think it was. Yeah, Swords and Wizardry. Yeah. Okay. So in any case, so they made all of these, and then they started writing adventures and dungeons for them. It was fine. It was a nice little thing, right? But eventually somebody realized, well, hang on, we can do stuff that is compatible, right? At the same time, there was this old school movement that was going on talking about styles of play, and there were things like Flail Snail, right? Which was everybody just brings any character from any edition and you just play interacting, right? You can bring stuff from any book, right? And all of that sort of thing. And it was chaotic and rambling. But then some people said, well, hang on, well, what if, like most of this is very compatible, like you can take stuff out of one edition and put it in the other with just slight modification. So what if you make a whole bunch of new games that are then going to be compatible with each other, right? And the place where this really started to change was around, I think, 2007, 2008, with a book that I have somewhere here. I mean, this isn't the original version. This is from the newer edition, but this is Lamentations of the Flame Princess, right? Lamentations of the Flame Princess was the first really successful second wave OSR game. And so what does that mean? The first wave were the clones, the least interesting part of the OSR. Nobody even needs them anymore, right? Because now you can get all the old products. But anyways, the second wave was to take D&D in one of its formats, in this case Lamentations is basic expert rules, right? And alter it to suit a specific play style. In the case of this, James Raji, who was the creator of Lamentations of the Flame Princess, he modified D&D to make it more lethal, to remove some of the higher magic, to add like demon summoning and that sort of stuff, and to give it a whole aesthetic that he called, I think he called it grindhouse, a grindhouse aesthetic, right? So it's this kind of brutal, sinister, more horror than fantasy, but still fantasy type of game, you know, and it was very, very successful. It was, and there was a lot of resistance, right? There was a lot of resistance from the first wave OSR people, who were instead starting to get lost in the jungle of trying to determine the purest version of D&D instead of saying no, screw that, right? What we really want to do in the OSR is make a million versions of D&D that all are compatible with each other, so we can have every D&D type imaginable that'll be different from one another, not just repeating the same thing over and over again, right? Incidentally, Lamentations of the Flame Princess was the game that I used in my Dark Albion campaign. Dark Albion is one of my books. It's a setting book of the War of the Roses, basically, the fantasy version of the War of the Roses. And when I started that campaign, I was running Lamentations. Now, I saw that Lamentations was not quite right. There was still stuff in it that made it difficult to get the players to play in the true medieval authentic style, right? Like paying attention to things like how in a medieval authentic setting, you know, certain characters, clerics and nobles, would never grovel to steal the you know, to rob a corpse, right? To get a few pennies, right? But in Lamentations, you have to do that because that's how you get experience points. So that sort of thing, and then also the magic system was not authentic. All that stuff led me to start changing those rules. And so eventually those rules became Lion and Dragon, which I have over there because I didn't bring all the other books of mine, right? Lion and Dragon is the first medieval authentic game that I created, as in the rule game, because Dark Albion was first, but it was a setting book. And Lion and Dragon is essentially a very profoundly modified version of Lamentations. Now, if you read them, the rules are radically different for the two of them, right? They do not resemble each other very much anymore. But that is the way that the design movement works. I'm using this as an example to tell you. So people get inspired by certain books in the OSR, and this leads them to draw and to take, you know, sometimes there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can take parts from one book and parts from another book and part from some other book and from some source book or whatever and mix those all together and get something new, right? That is completely acceptable in the OSR because the OSR recognizes, obviously, that the compatibility is essential. So that means nobody owns the rules, right? Nobody owns the rules, even the ones that they make. Now, obviously, if you're literally plagiarizing, that's another story. But what I'm meaning to say is that if you come up with a fancy mechanic, you should assume, in fact, that is going to be borrowed by someone sooner or later, you know, assuming your game is successful. So this is all to say that's a big part of how the OSR works. So you have the second and third wave products are feeding on each other. Third wave, by the way, is like what I just described in my details about Dark Albion. A third wave product is not just to change the rules to fit a specific play style, but rather to create a particular setting and make the rules conform specifically to that setting or genre, right? So Baptism of Fire is a third wave OSR product. This is a second wave OSR product because it changes the rules to fit a style, but it doesn't change it to fit a world, right? To fit a context. Whereas Baptism of Fire, everything in there is about making it early medieval authentic in Europe, right? And specifically in Poland. And is designed to be the ultimate version of that product, right? So these are all things that you'll almost never hear about when you see other YouTube videos on the OSR. They want to talk about all kinds of other stuff that has nothing, that is not really that, right? It's not really that of value, right? Another early second wave OSR product was Adventure Conquer King. Now, I think this one I was in the original Cutting Edge video. This is the first edition. There's now a second edition of it that has recently come out by, it's Alexander McCree's, good guy. And essentially this was a game where what he wanted, so this is why it's second wave, it's D&D, kind of, it's BX, I think, with a few like third edition influences, which is fine, right? And what he wanted was to create a system that gave a lot of emphasis on the higher level play of running territories, domains, kingship, and all that sort of thing, right? To have this high level faction play and stuff like that. And it's very good at that, you know, that, and also it has the stuff on economics, right? So you can like simulate if you're doing trade and that sort of thing. And it's very popular. It's popular because of it as a game, because the game is good. It's also popular among a certain crowd because Alexander Macris is a well-known kind of political figure, not unlike myself in some ways, you know, in terms of being a guy in, what I mean is a guy in the hobby that is well known for his overt political postures, right? And it's a great game, right? That's another one of the other good examples, right? Another one is Dungeon Crawl Classics, right? Dungeon Crawl Classics. Now, this is not a game. Sadly, it's a game I can't recommend that you purchase in this modern age. Even though it's probably one of the greatest OSR games of all time. As in terms of rules, right? If you don't give a damn about like politics at all, and you want something that has incredible rules, well, the DCC role-playing game is an incredible rule set. It's a second wave product, and it is a product that takes Dungeons & Dragons, makes it weirder, makes it more gonzo, makes it actually fit much more of the style of Appendix N, right? In that the magic is more like what you see in most of those stories. The kind of weirdness is ramped up. And it is a game that is especially incredible in how it handles niche protection. It was something that, you know, all three of these, for example, in different ways, the DCC, Acts, and Lamentations, were all very influential in my own designs, right? And Dungeon Crawl Classics is also very close to my heart because my longest running campaign of World of the Last Sun, which you can buy because I made it, not them, right? World of the Last Sun setting that you could buy. I run it with Dungeon Crawl Classics, and that's it's a gonzo world that is based on this idea of like, well, okay, so what kind of a world would it be where the DCC rules were made any sense, and that's what I created. And I've been running it for almost 12 years now, right? It's every 2 weeks, 12 years, right? It's been an amazing campaign, and it's got no sign of cutting down, right? And a big part of that is the design of the rules in Dungeon Crawl Classics, in that you have this powerful niche protection. So the warriors have like a bonus die that they can then use to do like these super feats of athleticism every round if they want to. Thieves can temporarily spend luck points to get bonuses to do like crazy things at pivotal moments, right? The magic users and the clerics have magic that they can that can be cast to like very high levels, even at low level, if you get a good enough roll. But then they also have a bunch of weird side effects that can happen, right? Like wizards can get corruption and turn into like increasingly less human weirdos, and clerics might get sent on a divine quest. So the stuff in it is really top notch. It's really great, and it is something that is that was basically a big jump in the level of gonzo that was found in the OSR. It led to stuff like Yoon Suin. I don't know if the creator of Yoon Suin would be a big fan of mine. I suspect not, but you know, who knows? I've tried to contact him a couple of times, but maybe I don't have the right address or something. But Yoon Suin is a masterpiece of a book, though, right? So again, I don't really know this guy's politics, so I very much suspect, because of how weird this setting is, that he's probably a lefty. But there's nothing inherently political in this book, unless the fact that he made it the wrong kind of length, you know, compared to most books, like he's got it sideways. Unless that you think is a sign of profound degeneracy or something. But this is a setting that is based in a kind of pseudo Southeast Asia setting, and it's got like some of the weirdest modifications that you are likely to find outside of My World of the Last Sun. I think My World of the Last Sun has more weird stuff in it, but this one has like got very specific weird stuff that gives it a very particular style, you know. So you have like, what are they, crab people in this? Like you can play a crab person, you can play all kinds of crazy shit, and it's got like these generators, right? So okay, so you roll for your race and background and all this sort of stuff, right? And you roll for different details. So you could be a slug man, you could be a dwarf. A slug man, I guess. Oh no, and then there's also crabmen, yeah. The crabmen, and that's the crabman class. I knew there were crabmen. Crab people. Look like crabs, taste like people. And there's all kinds of like weird creatures that are all inspired by it to certain degrees. It's not like super authentic in the medieval authentic sort of sense of my books, but it is also very clearly something this guy has studied. Is the monsters all come from like weird mythologies of Southeast Asia. So it's basically like you're playing in, I don't know, Laos or Vietnam or somewhere in an ancient time full of really weird stuff. And it was one of the earlier books that I saw that had generators for play, right? So as in generators that create a sandbox environment. And that was a huge influence on me, right? This idea that you can roll a series of random tables that will then allow you from there to put together a kind of a situation, right? Which is something that that I've increasingly used for myself in my books, right? And these are all innovations, right? In fact, after the first wave, the OSR went from being something that was just a kind of meant to be a recreation to being a huge innovation. Over here, I've got the Lost Dungeons of Tonisborg. This one has come out since after that video, so I know for sure it wasn't in the original. But it is actually an incredible example of an OSR product, because it's talking about the Dungeon of Tonisborg is one of the earliest D&D dungeons. It was created before D&D was ever published. And it was never published itself until now. It was finally found and published by a group of people that were in touch with the people that ran the Blackmore campaign. So this came from Dave Arneson. And this book, therefore, it has a big history section that's really interesting, and then it creates the entire dungeon, And then at the back, there is a set of rules. And here's the thing. These rules are also OSR. Because they are based on the rules that Arneson was using in his original Blackmoor campaign. But Arneson was constantly changing his rules. So this is actually the author's own interpretation of one way that these rules could have been presented. That makes it an OSR product, and it is OSR compatible, and it's an incredibly good dungeon, by the way. It's so weird because it does a lot of things that were later not kept in modern dungeons, right? So there's some like really weird stuff about it. And then there's the question of genre, right? So do you want the OSR in World War II? Operation White Box. You play commandos, British or American commandos, in doing missions in World War II. And if you want to, you can take something from every other book in here and put it into this game too, right? Like if you want it to be, okay, it's commandos, but you're fighting orcs, or if you want to say, oh, you know, there's crabmen. We don't know if they're friend or foe, right? Like if you want to throw that in. If you want to have magic spells in World War II, all of that is possible. Now, this doesn't have those, right? The book itself is essentially a modern game with no weird shit, right? But you can add it. You can put it right in there, right? And it'll work exactly right. It's designed based off of swords and wizardry. And that means it can be compatible with any of the other books. You could take stuff from Baptism of Fire and put it in here. Same thing if you want, I don't know, go back a little further to 1930s, Raiders of the Lost Artifacts, right? Archaeological Adventures. It's a great little book. And it's a complete game. And obviously it allows you to do kind of simulations of like the kind of pulp 1930s adventuring. It's got some weird magic and stuff in it, but not exactly the type that is normally in D&D. And it's great. And then in Wretched Country, I wasn't going to go through all this without totally leaving out the Wretched verse, right? Which is God. They've published more RPGs than me, which is incredible, right? In a much shorter time. Wretched Country is one that I quite like. And it is a kind of spaghetti Western RPG, right? Set in the 1870s or whatever. And it is, you know, completely straightforward in that, though you can also add like Native American magic and weird mysticism or Victorian mysticism and stuff like that, both of which I think the Red Room people are very into. But again, you could have Wretched Country with orcs, right? Wretched Country with snailmen or whatever, with slugmen, you know. You could have Wretched Country with the Dungeon of Tonnisborg. All of it is compatible. That's one of its greatest qualities. And the people who are making videos, why are they? That's all the books you're going to see, by the way. So if all you wanted to see was which books I picked, there you are. But the people who are making videos are almost never managing to express correctly what the OSR is, in spite of the fact that it's been very well defined by people for a long time. So in a lot of cases, you still have a ton of people who have been playing games for years and who think, oh no, the OSR is just people making copies of old games and then making some dungeons, right? They don't know that there's literally thousands of OSR products, hundreds of which have been bestsellers, right? that are products that are making some of the most radical and creative concepts in RPGs. And I think that there's several reasons. One could be ignorance, right? There are, of course, 5e gamers might have barely heard, if ever, of the OSR. So they might just not know, right? And some other people might not have bothered to actually look into what the OSR is, right? And they're talking about it out the side of their mouth or whatever. The second, though, would be that you have some of these people who are kind of anti-OSR, or who are OSR traditionalists. So there are some people that want to intentionally promote the idea that no, the OSR is just people playing copies of 0 edition D&D and just running dungeon crawls because you can't do anything else with the OSR. And then some other people might be saying, well, no, to see the OSR, the stuff that really matters is like the 13th copy of the clone of basic expert rules, right? So, they're all identical except for the art, but it's really important we keep making more, exact copies of those rules, which are not the most popular thing in OSR, contrary to what people believe, right? I mean, and Shadow Dark proved that, Shadow Dark, has somebody was saying, oh, this has shattered the OSR. That some YouTuber, I'm not going to name him because I don't want to get into a fight with him, but he was like, oh, Shadow Dark has divided the OSR, or something like that was his video. No, it hasn't. It hasn't. But if you are a guy who thinks that the only important part of the OSR are the clone books, then it's shattered it for you. Yes, because Shadow Dark was such a big success, and you can no longer pretend that nobody is playing second and third wave OSR games, right? Even though you never could, right? Like the amount of money that these games have made. I mean, I own a house because of these games. Like that's how much money it's made just for me. All right. So it is not, it was never that way. But the thing was that they could always just kind of ignore it and just say, no. The real OSR is just about old school D&D. It's only if you're playing the actual old editions. Everything else is just weird shit we don't like, right? Because they didn't want to be innovative. There were a whole bunch of people, like when James Radji started in 2008, I was there and I was arguing the same things and fighting about this with these people. There were a ton of these people that would say that, no, you can't change any rule. You can't have any rule that was not in one of the original books at the very least, right? And that's it, right? And that isn't the way. What has to be kept is the structure, right? The landmarks of what defines OSR, right? So there are certain things in games that you cannot use, right? You can't use concepts that wouldn't have existed in the old school period. But you can use concepts that could have existed in the old school period, in the sense that they're just elaborations of things that actually already existed in the old school period. So if you can't do like some really radical like story gaming thing, because story gaming wasn't a thing in that time. But if you want to like have a different set of magic rules, yes, you can do that, right? As long as the fundamental key remains that your game has to be able to be compatible with basic expert D&D, let's say, because that's the most popular one. And then the third group are the bro SR guys, who are actually an anti-OSR group. They hate the OSR. They believe the only game you should play is AD&D First Edition. Those guys are pretty much dead now. They're mostly gone. But once in a while, you still see one somewhere around there and trying to malign the OSR. But I think for me, like that really it is a combination of the people who don't know what the hell they're talking about, right? So like the second you see someone start doing a video on the OSR and the only thing they're talking about is clone games, like OSC and Swords and Wizardry and Labyrinth Lord and there are various other ones. If that's all they're talking about, then they know nothing about the OSR and you should just ignore them, right? Like that is the answer. So anyways, I guess that's everything for today. If you like this video, please share it anywhere people find it interesting and getting pissed off about it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Check out my other videos. Check out the original version of the OSR is Cutting Edge. It's one of my earliest videos, but it was one that has proven the test of time. I hope this one will too. And check out all of my products. In the description of this video, you can find all my various games like Baptism of Fire, like the Old School Companion 3, and you will not be disappointed. They are, some of them are full RPGs, some of them are campaign settings, some of them are supplements that you can use in any OSR product. But you are not going to be disappointed by my games, and you should pick them up. And check out all my other, all my products are linked in the description. If you expand the description of this video, you can especially check out the Pundit Files section. As of the time that I'm filming this video, the latest issue of the Pundit Files is, I think it is still Races and Regions of the Galaxy for Star Adventurer. That is number 38. But it could be by the time this video is published that we will have number 39. But I don't remember which one 39 is, so that's not helping much. But anyways, go to the Red Room store. where you could get, for example, Wretched Country and some of the other Wretched stuff. And while you're there, check out the Pundit Files, and there's currently 38 issues of the Pundit File. They're a small periodical. You can get any one of them, and they have all kinds. That's OSR too, right? These zines that have like all kinds of little supplements and little rule alterations, options, and things like that. So you got 38 examples there, and any one of those you want to get it just costs $3.50. So if you can get someone, maybe the Loch Ness Monster, to get you $3.50, then you can buy an issue of the Pundit Files. All right, that's everything for today. Currently smoking. This is a Nerup Hawkbill plus Argento Roots.